We have two amazing people. These are people that I can vouch for anytime. I've known them, worked with them, hired them in my past life. So these are actually my people, and I trust them as some of the best recruiters that I've ever worked with before, or HR professionals, I should like. So welcome everybody. If this is not your first time here, then you know that we typically have, well, if this is your first time, then you know we typically have like housekeeping rules. But before we dive into that, I did want to find out, for those of you that are already here and live, where are you joining from? Can you tell us in the chat, please? Where are you joining from? You can represent with your flags, or you can just write out the country or the city, and would love to know where you're joining from. I'm personally joining all the way from, I'm saying all the way because I don't know where you are, but I'm joining from London. Felix, where are you joining from?
From Amsterdam, Netherlands.
And Nneka, you're joining us from?
Joining from Kenya, Nairobi.
Whoop, whoop. So we do have some diversity in terms of our location. Yes, I'm seeing some Ghana, Nigeria. So please pop in the chat very comfortably and freely where you're joining us from. We would love to know. We do have quite like nearly 20 people on. So where are you guys joining from? And then, you know, if you want to talk about the weather as well, like what's your weather saying? I know what Nigeria weather is saying. You know, I think Ghana is pretty warm as well. So it'd be nice to know where you guys are at and what the weather is saying. Accra, Ghana. It's lovely to see Ghanaians on here. I know that when we looked at the registrations, we did see like some people from Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire. So if you're on the call, feel free to give us a shout. Burkina Faso. So give us a shout. We're very, very excited to have you guys here. And so whilst you're putting in your locations in the chat, I did want to talk about our housekeeping. So if you are not speaking, which you won't be for the first part of this session, please try to keep yourselves muted just so there is no interference or interruptions to the conversations that we'll be having today. As you already know from the flyer, and you can see their beautiful faces here, we've got Felix and Nneka, and I'll be doing a proper introduction, you know, to them very soon. But I did want to say, like, mute yourselves, please, and feel free to have your writing tabs, notebooks, like whatever you take notes on, because you'll be leaving with some tips for sure. And then lastly, we will have a Q&A section. We've literally made sure we have at least 30 minutes for Q&A. So do not worry, you will get a chance to ask your questions live and direct, and we're very much happy to entertain and answer your questions to the best of our abilities and knowledge. But we will give you that time after we're done with the Q&A session with the panel. So think Nneka and then Felix. So wanted to make sure you guys were aware and comfortable with that. I also wanted to ask you guys, whilst we're still getting some people joining, I do want to try, let me see if I can do a poll actually. Let's see if I can put a poll in there. Yeah, these days I use Microsoft and not Google anymore. And I've always been a Google girl, which is so strange. But I haven't used I've used Microsoft for the last 6 months now, and my brain has wired. But yeah, let me see if I can figure out how to do a poll on this. I know that it should be somewhere on here. Well, whilst I'm figuring that out, I did want to say, okay, found it. I did want to say that in the first part of this section, we will spend time with both Nneka and Felix. We will learn about their journeys, just to give you, you know, a breakdown of what you should expect. We'll spend time learning about their journeys and how they got into tech. They have quite some similarities and also some big differences in their careers. So it'd be nice to learn about their transition and their career journey. And I always say, like, whenever you listen to someone's career journey or their career story, you would know that regardless of how they frame it, there's always one or two things you can learn from that, even before we dive into the actual Q&A or before we dive into just getting to know them a little bit more and their experience as well. So I popped in a poll in the chat. I want to pop in another one if possible. It's so nice playing around with the polls. Can you guys see the polls now? Are they live? Perfect. So I do want to get your responses to that. And then we kick off once I see you guys, your response coming in. So this is easy. You don't have to type. Just pop your answer by clicking one. Muinat, you say you're asking, you hope you get the recording. Yes. So I typically put the recording on my YouTube channel, and I will share a link with everyone that joins the session after the session. So yes, you will have access to watch that recording as many times as so I'm seeing lots of people put in there. I'm just catching up on the locations. So we've got Rhoda in the UK, we've got Dorcas in Nigeria, very warm. I know, I'd rather be in Nigeria right now though, than this cold. So let's swap. I come to London and I go to Nigeria for like a month to get some warmth. Port Harcourt, amazing. Okay. All right, guys, thank you for participating in the poll. We're going to dive in now into the session properly. If you're just joining, welcome. I'm about to get into an introduction. So if you don't know me or you've never come across me before, I did want to do a bit of introduction so you know who the host of Tech Without the Code is. My name is Jess, Bamtefa, but everyone calls me Jess. I founded Tech Without the Code literally last year, so 2025, and it came really from a passion of just helping people build their employability skills. It's something I've always done, but less formally than I'm doing today. So that's where that came from. In terms of my actual background, I have about 13 years experience in recruiting overall. I started my career on the agency side, and then I finally moved into tech. So I have about 10 years, nearly 10 years in tech at the moment. I've worked with companies like Andela, companies like Netflix. I'm with a company called Sidecore, which is a global MarTech company. I'm also a global people leader. I've been leading and managing people since my first year in recruiting. So I do have over 11, 12 years experience in leading people and building teams. And I'm also a career coach and development advocate. Like I said, I'm really passionate about anything employability, across different levels. It's something I do in my sleep and I do it with joy. And that's why we have Tech Without the Code. Now, when you were signing up for this session, I always put like a couple of questions in there just to get a sense of who you are, where you're from, and your background. And this is essentially what I asked in the poll. And I like to let you guys know how you answered, just full transparency. So in terms of the audience we have today and expecting to join, a chunk of you actually are already in tech, which I found very fascinating. So we already have 58% of you working in tech, and then there's 24% trying to move into tech, and the remaining people really were quite unclear, or maybe they're outside tech. We really could not get a hold of any clarity in that information. But this is very helpful data because it helps me and my panelists know exactly what you're looking to get out of this session. In terms of seniority signals, where your experience is or where your career is at this point, we did realize that 66% of you are individual contributors in your current roles, and then some of you are managers or people leads, and then some of you are just senior leadership position, and then we have just a very tiny chunk of entry level. So I always say that Tech Without the Code is not for one particular kind of, like one bucket of people. It's for any and everyone, regardless of where you are in your career. And in terms of our top countries by registration, we have a lot of folks from Nigeria, from the UK, Ghana, Burkina Faso, Canada, US, Kenya, Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire, which was very exciting to see. This is a very dynamic and diverse set of Africans. And Tech Without the Code, as you know, was founded primarily for Africans, whether you are African in Africa or African in diaspora. That's for you. In terms of what you guys responded to for your learning goals, like what you'd love to leave with is learning how to identify a niche, which I think will land really well today. I'm considering that Nneka is someone who's also pivoted quite recently. So I think it'd be nice to go into that internal move and what that, pivoting situation could look like depending on where you are today. And people want to learn about how to land remote jobs. That's a very juicy conversation that I feel like everyone is talking about these days. Like sometimes people don't even want to move out of the country. They just want to get a remote job that pays them in, foreign currency. And we'll be talking about that a little bit today as well. And then some of you want to know how to move without experience. Some of you want to, learn about career growth and projections, what that could look like. And some just want to build a network, which this is, a huge part of, right? You get to meet Nneka, you get to meet Felix, and you can, subsequently follow them or connect with them on LinkedIn, on a one-to-one basis. Like there's opportunities for that. And then some of you want to learn about interview preparation, how you can be valuable across board, and how you can essentially assess technical talents. And lastly, data decision making. I found that one very exciting because it didn't give enough color, but enough for us to leverage our experience and our skill sets to help you today. So that's how you answered. And now let us meet our amazing speakers. Yay, drum rolls, please. Firstly, we've got Nneka. Nneka is a people and culture leader. like I said, if you're just joining, I did mention that I've worked with Nneka in the past and Felix as well. So these people are my people. Nneka is a people and culture leader with over 10 years experience of TA. She basically entire career as a recruiter, and now she's transitioned into a more generalist role, which is the people engagement and culture role. She spent all these years building and leading global recruiting organizations across Africa, across the US, and also she's worked with remote first teams. One exciting fun fact you know about Nneka is I call her the global nomad. I don't know where she lives. I don't know where I don't know where she, like, we just have to find out, where are you? Are you in the country? Are you in the UK today? Nneka could be in Nairobi tomorrow. She could be in, I don't know, Canada the next day. We don't know where Nneka lives. So we want to learn about that because somehow it's connected to her work, it's connected to her job, and she's thriving. So she's setting that example of, like, you don't need to, in Nigerian word, jackpot before you can succeed. So she's making that happen. And I want you guys to learn about such opportunities as well. So she's currently the head of people engagement and culture at Wave, where she's driving organizational design, leadership development, compensation, thought partnership, internal mobility. I can go on and on, but I want you guys to give it up for Nneka in the comments if you can. Welcome, Nneka. Nneka, do you want to say a word or two before I move over to Felix?
Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing. And then we've got Felix. Again, I've hired Felix. Felix, I've hired you like twice in my career, haven't I? I think so.
Yes, you have.
I hired Felix in my first job. I hired him and ran away. So we started a relationship with a bit of beef, just so you know. I hired him and I was on my way out, and he joined because of me, and he did not know that I was leaving. So we did start our relationship on a fun basis. So Philip is a very senior TA partner with over a decade years of experience. He has been hiring both technical and non-technical talent. So he brings that dynamic and very diverse set of skills for a recruiter. He's done leadership hiring, exec hiring, entry level, mid-level, you name it. He's done that across board. Okay, Emoji, can you please mute yourself? I think you can get you muted. Thank you. So Felix is currently at Lightspeed, but his background really, he's worked at companies like Andela, he's worked at Decathlon Digital, he's worked at Meta very recently as well. So he's done big tech, small tech, startup, and I think his experience would really be exciting for every one of us to learn from today. He is known for building scalable hiring strategies and partnering very closely with the business leader. So think hiring teams, because recruiters don't just do volume, we also do a lot of influencing, a lot of management, a lot of coaching as well with hiring managers, like guiding their decisions. It's all right, Moji, not a problem at all. And, so that is Felix. Felix, a comment, a word or two for my people?
Thank you, and excited to be here, and yeah, let's learn together.
Amazing. Okay, so we're going to kick off with, no, we're not going to kick any just yet. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you guys can actually see them, live, especially as they answer questions. So we're going to start off with a little bit of fun. I want you guys to get to know them a little bit more. So we are going to start off with some icebreaker questions for both Felix and Nneka. I hope you're ready for me. So my first question that I have for both of you actually is, what is one job that you had, I don't know, maybe it's in your past life or maybe sometime even recently, that did not make it onto your resume for whatever reason? That job that you did in the past that you're just like, nah, the world must not know about this job, or it's no longer relevant in 2026. So it's never going to see the light of day on my resume. So what is that one job? Who wants to go first? Nneka, do you want to take a stab?
Oh, actually, I can. I'm happy to go first. So it was a teaching job. I actually did do the job, but I took off because like, I was not made for this. I think it was at a time where I was trying to build my patience and tenacity. And I think teaching people is something that just requires a lot of patience that I didn't have at the time. And I also thought that this wasn't paying so well. So yes, I feel bad, but
that's funny. It's funny because I actually did a bit of teaching, but this was during NYSC. For non-Nigerians, we have a program in Nigeria after university where you go for a year and, you basically do the job for the government, really. So I was placed in a primary school in the western part of Nigeria where they barely spoke English. So yes, I hear you on patience and tenacity. Because yeah, there were days I went home talking to myself. So, and then Felix, about you, what is that one job?
Okay. Is there one job now? I can think of one job that was never in my CV, and I also could think of one aspect of a job that is in my CV that I never liked. So maybe I'll share both.
Okay.
One job that never came into my CV was a long time ago. I was part of a water bottling company, like pretty much what we will call a pure water company back then. Just leading the production. Is it supervising the production team now? But yeah, that's me making it look like really big, but it was just very small scale bottled water company. Yeah, I see a couple of people laughing. That's good. So the other one is, well, this job actually made it to my CV, but the part that did not make it to my CV was the part where I had to pretty much go to the island and just be knocking doors to get basically doing BDR sales, like pretty much just going to your doors and sharing your brochures and saying, hey, we do trainings here, would you be interested? And all, then they're like looking at you like, okay, and you're walking all the way on the island. Yeah it was a recruiting job. It was a recruiting job, but that part will never make it to my CV.
This is hilarious. It's so funny because I've known Felix for a long time and I never knew this part of you. I can definitely see you in the pure water business. I can see you. Production supervisor. That's amazing. Okay, well, thank you guys for indulging me. Now we're going to dive into, I guess, the more serious questions. Now our session has started. You guys have talked a little bit, we've learned a little bit about your backgrounds. Yes, we've learned about, the career that you held prior to becoming who you are today. Can you just share very briefly, if you can, your journey from Nigeria? Because Felix, you particularly, you've made as many moves as I made in terms of countries and relocations, I think. So you've moved from Nigeria, I think you moved with Meta at the time, and then you moved Ireland. Like, just tell the people that career journey, how you even got the job, what that transition looked like, and what parts of that journey felt harder or just generally different than you would typically expect.
Yeah, I would. Thanks for the question. I'll just try and summarize quickly. Moving, I think, again, from the beginning, the idea in terms of the kind of companies I wanted to work with when I came into tech or into recruiting, the vision I had was I wanted to work with companies that were innovative, that had tech, and they were solving real world problems and dealing with people as well. So obviously I'd worked and Della, same, and Abson at the time. And so when Meta came, Meta was a different experience because one, you're moving into a different country and with different culture, and obviously Meta was very high pace with the hiring bar was so high, I would say. So it took a lot of adjusting, I would say. The first couple of months, I didn't do my best work. I would be super honest. Like I was lost pretty much. So because you had like a lot of recruiters that are very much good as well, like really brilliant recruiters. So you had to pretty much bring your A game, and sometimes your A game isn't enough. So I struggled with some form of what's the word now? The word eludes me. Like, you think, say that again?
The imposter syndrome.
Exactly, yeah. So you struggle with a bit of imposter syndrome because you have like a lot of people that are good and you're trying to see, oh, am I doing the right thing? So that was an experience. It took a little bit of adjusting. But then when I got to understand who I was and what made me qualified to be there, And I started understanding that, yeah, I am meant to be here. And it was just that shift in the mindset. And then obviously, I don't know if people on the call were at some point, the tech industry suffered a lot of downturn, I would say. And so there was a lot of layoffs at the point, and my role was impacted, and then I had to pretty much look for another role. And that meant moving outside of Ireland at the time. And I think what stood out then was also, I think with the experience moving outside of the country, I wasn't worried in such a way that I was going to change environment, because the meta experience is sort of giving me a good landing, and I've sort of adjusted to being tough and also being rigorous. And I thought, yeah, what other environment could be as rigorous as this? So yeah, let's take it on. And I think that's what influenced the moving to Decathlon, which is also like a tech company and also kind of aligns to everything that I wanted. But just to summarize, I think obviously you deal with the culture, but you also deal with understanding the nuances of the different businesses and quickly adapting. And I think the Nigerian spirit also came through. Like, yeah, we always try to adapt wherever we find ourselves. And so, yeah, I think that was all, bringing all of that together kind of helped in moving. And yeah, as soon as I moved to the Netherlands, understanding, and then now I'm a Lightspeed. Yeah, I think that would be my journey and how I've moved and kind of adjusted to the different landscape of my roles till now.
Thank you so much for sharing, and also for that level of transparency and vulnerability. I think this is exactly what this platform is, really, like safe space. We're talking real talk that would not make it on LinkedIn, is how I say. So thank you for sharing that journey. And a couple of things to take away from that is, if you've been given that opportunity, you have to best believe that you're made for that opportunity. Like you belong, basically. And sometimes no one helps you get through that. You have to do it yourself. So I love that journey, that transition of like, you saying I didn't give my best to like, what, a wake up call, and then you started to like deliver results. So I think that's amazing. Nneka, you have a different story, because like I said, if you're just joining, Nneka is our global nomad. Don't know where she lives, don't know where she pays taxes. We're about to find out. So Nneka is someone who is also Nigerian. And Nneka, I think when you left Andela, you moved to Wave, and you've been there for 6 years or thereabouts. Tell us about that journey. Tell us about that transition for you, because yes, it's a combination of an African/American company, but give us more context, give us more body, about your journey, your experience, how you've landed, how you've survived, how you've transitioned. Like my bullet can keep going on and on, so I'll stop talking so you can actually have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jess. And I'm so excited to be here. I think when you asked me the question initially about the career, that maybe something I had done that didn't make it to my CV, I actually feel like I wasn't able to give the entirety of all of the backstories, because I had done quite a couple of things before I eventually found myself in HR, which was very accidental. I remember one time I got a job. It was a banking job, but it was predominantly sales focused. I did the job one day, and the next day I didn't show up. I had a stint in real estate as well. After day one, I was like, bro, I'm out. I took off. And I've actually, tried to be a blog writer as well. I did that so my journey into HR was something accidental. It was L&D that I did first. And I was like, oh, I think I actually liked it here, because prior to that, I had done, for those of us who are Nigerians, that typically you have to do your service year, where I was posted to a newspaper company. I was so bored, because they put me in the library and I was just, flipping through papers and putting them in files. I was like, no, Jesus Christ, take me out of here. And so, I was like, okay, maybe what I need to do is to maybe explore a bit. And, I landed in L&D at first, and I really liked it because, I had to build case studies. I had to write a bit. I do like to write. And I was like, oh, I actually love it here. And one time, the company was a consulting firm. They had openings and they were like, oh, we are really pressed for bandwidth. Nneka, do you want to try out, hiring? I was like, oh, sure, why not? And so I did. I was like, oh, I think I actually like, recruiting more. Maybe I need to ditch L&D for recruiting. So that's pretty much how my recruiting journey started. And from there, I went to a much bigger consulting firm to be a recruiting lead. And it was going really well until the opening at Andela came up. It was the first time I had ever seen a remote recruiting role. I remember I reached out to Jess to say, oh, I am very interested in this role. It was an individual contributor role, but what made it really exciting was that it was like an experience I had never had before. I was supposed to recruit for the US, and the bulk of my experience had been to recruit for West Africa. And so I was like, I really want to try out this job, and I was so glad to get in. So it was pretty much like the start of my career in tech. But beyond just pivoting to, do recruiting in-house, one of the things that drew me to Andela at the time was that it was super mission driven. For those of us, I actually see some Andela alumni on the call, but for some of us who, worked at Andela, I'm very sure that so many people can attest to how great of a company that was. So it was like a two-tier thing for me, upscaling my recruiting career and also deepening, the level of impact that I wanted to make. So I did Andela for a while, and then Wave happened. I'm still at Wave. Wave is such a phenomenal company. Easily one of the best places I've ever worked in my life. Not that I've worked in too many companies, but I've been here for about 6 years, so that says a lot. So I started the journey at Wave when Wave used to have a sister company called SendWave. For some of us who are abroad who send money home, I'm sure you know too many remittance companies, TapTapSend, World Remit, and all of that. So, but SendWave was Wave's sister company. And when we sold SendWave to World Remit, Wave became a standalone group of companies. And so we started to build and deepen, expansion there. So I was really leading the recruiting team. We were scaling at the time. It was Senegal. Then we expanded into Cote d'Ivoire. And then there was the Gambia, there was Uganda, Mali, Burkina Faso, Benin, and Togo, which we eventually shut down, Cameroon, DRC, Guinea, Niger, so many countries. So it was easily one of the best experiences I've had in terms of broadening my reach, hiring from various sectors, growing a team. We had a layoff in the year 2022 at Wave, but prior to that layoff, it was the talent team, was a team of 40 plus people. So it was really a really impactful role. And so after the layoff happened, we started to rebuild again. And, one of the things, if you ask me, Nneka, what other areas of HR did you like? I would easily say none except talent, right? But something that happened for me was that, working in a company where, you are given an opportunity to sort of grow your skills, and it's more or less like an enabling environment to grow your skill set. And what started to happen over time is that, unknown to me, I started to pick up other skills. I was doing a bit of talent management here. I was doing people partnering, compensation and benefit. I introduced our first ever internal mobility program. So even though I would always say that, oh, it's talent or nothing, I didn't know that I was unknowingly building other skills. And so in 2025, which was last year, it's almost a year since I transitioned, I made the grand transition from head in talent to people engagement and culture, where I do a host of things, looking after people, talent org design, a bit of performance management, working with leaders, coaching and mentoring leaders, and just being an all-around people person. I'm going to stop here because usually when I talk about my career transitions, I go on and on, but it's been an incredible journey. And if anyone had told me that I would leave talent, I would laugh and scoff maybe. But now that I've made the transition, I'm like, why didn't I do this sooner? Because I really love it here. So
don't tempt us. Don't tempt us. My question to you, I think people also want to know this, is, your current situation, because we've talked about Felix, who's like moved countries and he's tied to specific countries based on his job, for as long as he wants to. What is that current setup for you, and how realistic is it for people on the call who might want similar setup? Maybe they don't want to relocate to a specific country, but they want to add value across borders. beyond borders without any restrictions?
Yeah. When I wanted to leave Andela, I was interviewing, with a couple of companies, and I was exploring roles that. So there were two things. There were a couple of things that I cared about in my life. I care about freedom. I'm a dreamer, so I like to explore and travel. And so somehow I wanted a job that could let me travel, but I couldn't articulate it in terms of the pursuit, right? So I would interview to these jobs that would relocate me, supposedly. Sometimes I would get to the final stages and I'll get rejected, like so sad. Anyway, I interview at Wave, I get in, and I remember the first time I got my offer, I literally sat at the floor of Andela. So people who have worked at Andela would know a room called Ubunike. It was that room that I got my offer, and I sat on the floor because it was like a dream come true. It was a role that obviously the compensation was interesting, but importantly, I was going to work remotely. It was a role that also had like travel opportunities, and I was like, thank you, God. And I think being in this role for me, and also hiring people who have been at Wave, or having an opportunity to interview gazillion people, I think transitioning being able to work remotely is a skill itself, right? Most times when we hire people to work remotely, we want to look at whether they have the autonomy to do so. And I think that one of the things that helped me navigate that transition from Andela was that Andela also had like a bit of a hybrid setup. And so coming to Wave and working entirely remotely and just being able to travel, let me backtrack a bit, because I think I'm missing a question that Jess may have asked me. Jess is asking, did you say how am I able to navigate?
Yeah, like how you even land, like you're telling us the story of how you landed it, but I'm saying, for people on here who like, I do that setup that Nneka has, are there companies that could potentially offer that setup to them as well, and how they could position themselves for it?
Yeah, definitely. So I definitely think that there are a lot of companies that, would employ you to work remotely, but there are specific skill sets. When people want to join Wave, I say Wave is my reference point because it's like the model for, remote work. And they come to me and they say, Nneka, how do I navigate this? I think it actually begins from how do you interview, right? When you are being interviewed for a role that requires you to work remotely, there's a certain level of autonomy that an interviewer is looking for. They are looking if you have a sense of ownership. For instance, again, using Wave as a reference point, the way that our onboarding team is set up, we have, an OpCo onboarding team, which is like our operating countries, which means that when you get onboarded, you do it in person. But with remote onboarding, you have to navigate it, figure it out yourself. So from the door, you actually have to exhibit some level of autonomy and ownership, because there's literally nobody hand-holding you. And so from the interview, the skill sets that are being assessed for is this person demonstrating some level of ownership? And it doesn't even matter if you're an individual contributor or you're going to be a lead or a pod lead or a manager or whatever. But essentially, the starting point is the self-awareness, the autonomy, the flexibility, because there's a very big chance that you will land in a mix of a very multiculturally diverse, team. So you have to start figuring out how do I communicate? Am I a very compelling communicator? Your manager doesn't see you, so they have to trust that when they are not there, you are able to handle things. You are able to communicate in a compelling way. If you lead a team, are you able to influence people and win trust without necessarily having to see them? How are you communicating? How are you cascading information? How are you closing the communication loop? I think that these are, just summarily, some of the things that can get you in the door and help you succeed in a remote job in a nutshell. These are just some of the practical things I've been able to do.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And just to summarize what you shared, I think the biggest themes that have come out from what you've shared is around like communication, and there has to be a degree of trust and credibility from what you're saying for people to know that, yes, you're working remotely, we can't see you, we don't care to see you, because we want to trust that you're going to get your job done. Beyond getting the job done, we're going to trust that you're able to influence the people you're working with, your stakeholders, and also ultimately, just be as great a communicator as you can be, and also, in terms of execution and delivery as well. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. So Felix, I'm going to come back to you now. You have always hired both tech and non-tech, right? In terms of technical talents and non-technical talents. I know that at Meta, I think you are primarily focused on technical talents. In your current role, you're doing even GTM and a mix of different things, which has been very exciting for you. So I guess my question for you really is, from your experience, having worked with, say, 3 international companies now, what would you say that these tech companies consistently look out for in non-technical talent as a recruiter?
Thanks for the question. I think I would start this way. Tech companies, technology now is not just about the code. Gone are the days where you think of tech companies and you think of, oh, it's just about the code. Right now, if you do not have business acumen, if you do not speak the business language, then does not make any sense. It does not add up. And so what I'm trying to say is that what is common, whether it's tech or whether it's non-tech, is you showing up and being able to speak the language of the business. And what that means is that when you come up in the interview process, we want to see things that you've done that are pretty much related to what we are looking for in the business. Not so much about the technical part, obviously, but then just be able to speak the language of the business is what we look out for. And then the regular bits that we've always known, you also need to, in speaking the language of the business, apart from the sales point and the value that you can add, you're also talking from your sense of doing a bit of research in the company and understanding the culture and be able to speak to what you've done related to that. The other part I also want to mention is that some years back or a few years back, you get to hear, oh, war for talent. There's the war for talent. There's the war for talent. But 2026 is no longer war for talent. It is more about war for precision. So companies are not just looking for talent. They're looking for precision. And what that means is that we're not just looking for, let me just use maybe a developer, for example, or an FP&A. We're probably looking for an FP&A that has this particular skill to solve this problem. And so when you're coming to the interview or when you're putting out your CV, you must be able to say, oh, I'm a developer that has this skill that can solve this problem. And whilst you're doing that, it shows the kind of precision that we are looking for. And again, it still ties to speaking the business language. Again, understanding the job description, I always say that we look out for people that at least have a good understanding of the job description, maybe 50% of the job description. Again, that figure is subjective. But then as soon as you're able to align to what the expectation of the job role is, you're able to speak to the job role in terms of practical examples, what you've been able to do, and the results that come that resulted. I mean, the results that you got from doing what you do. In a nutshell, showing real world solution, real world action, and then speaking the language of the business is what we always look out for, whether it's a non-tech, whether it's tech. Those are the things that stand out first, I would say.
I love that. You know what I found interesting that you said? You talked about precision. You talked about resume, and I had a follow-up question on resume. But before I even go into that, just to share some context on my end as well, I was on a friend's live. This was like over the weekend. We're talking about like job search strategy, and one thing that they said was like, you know, why don't they give us an opportunity? We can do the job, right? Like it's clear we can do the job. And I said, there is something to do with precision. You know, beyond what the job description says, there's also what the company needs. So I think people miss out on that further research, like that helps you understand, okay, so I'm coming from, say, a Meta, a big scale company, and you're trying to apply to a company of under 5,000 employees. There are different problems there. There are different categories of problems. So whilst you can see the job description seems very much aligned to what you've done in your previous role, there is connect sometimes in terms of the skill, in terms of where the organization is at. Are they going through a transformation? How can you then position yourself correctly via your resume? Because that's the first way that they say hello to you. So even via your resume, how can you make sure you're speaking their language? And I think that is such a crucial thing that lots of candidates miss. And this goes even beyond tailoring your resume for the job. It's also tailoring your resume for the organization, for the scale of the organization. So I love that you touched on that, because I did hope that we will land there somehow. So I love that you talked about that. The question I do have next is around resumes. And maybe Nneka, you can take this one as well, because yes, whilst you're now in a non-TA role, you've been doing TA all your life, I'm sorry. So we're gonna ask you some technical TA questions, okay? So if you look back at the thousands of resumes that we've all reviewed, right? You say consistently separates candidates that actually get hired from non-tech roles, because they're focused on that, in global tech companies, and those who didn't. So it's one thing for everyone to get their CVs through the door, and some even go to the hiring process, right? But what is that one thing? If you just look at the resume, it's like, oh, this stands out, and we can see that immediate connection. And Felix, you can also chime in, because I know that you look at millions of CVs at this point. I don't look at as many CVs anymore, but I know you look at so many resumes. So we'd love to hear from both of you, because I think that's really what the audience would also love to connect to, because they are, many of us are candidates, right?
Yeah. I think for me, it's somewhat tied to what Felix had said about precision, but I would probably use the word clarity and maybe a bit of relevance. And I would also look at storytelling. And now, so when you go beyond what is the progression pattern that I'm seeing in your resume, not necessarily just the movement. I also technically don't really care about the gaps. I know that most TA people will tell you, oh, you don't need to have too many gaps on your resume. But I think that life happens. There might be so many things that might inhibit you from doing a job at a certain time, as long as there is a proper explanation for why there are certain gaps. I'm looking for a bit of consistency, progression. I know that some people don't index a lot on cover letters, but I feel like there are some compelling cover letters that I've read in my life. And even when I thought that the resume was not phenomenal, I was still able to talk to the person, just go with my gut feeling. And I know that recruiters have a lot of intuition. And in speaking to this person, you can tell that they are a fit. I work at a company that indexes a lot on mission fit, cultural alignment. And I want to see how your personal values align with the value of my company, right? I want to be able to quantify the impact of your work as much as possible. So demonstration of alignment in terms of the role and the company values. I want to see clarity and relevance. It doesn't even matter if you have not done TA. Maybe you've had a stint in L&D and you want to pivot. I want to see some sort of, alignment. So those are some of the things that I have looked out for in resumes.
I love that you talked about cover letters, because I feel like that's the most special thing. I always, by default, I'm raising my hand to say, I do not look at your cover letters. I'll tell you, I don't care for them.
Yeah.
Especially because I feel like the CV is now your playground. Do you get what I mean? You can pull, that's to your point around storytelling, right? I think people spend time doing the storytelling on their cover letters that probably won't get seen by half of the companies they're applying to, right? And then you're now missing out on the storytelling you could have told on your resume. So, some really good points that you've made there, Nneka. And I think one thing that you shared as well is around values alignment, because some people don't care about that. They just want to apply, get a job, tick the box, and move on. But I guess that's something you can't tell from a resume.
Correct.
You really can't. So that's where you really spend time drilling and trying to assess and identify all those qualities during the interview. And Felix, I don't know if you have a differing opinion or an additional thought, to what Nneka shared. I'd love to hear them, especially around CV and the interview process, because I think that's where people wonder, why wasn't I shortlisted? Why not me? Why them?
Yeah, plus one on everything that Nneka said. I just have a few points to add. So when it comes to CV, yeah, um, it's as a recruiter, and I'm talking from my own perspective. As a recruiter, you're not obviously 100% sure, and I think that's, let me just say, all recruiters are like that. The CV just gives you an idea. Oh, maybe this person will probably be able to do this, and then you just take a gamble. But the way I approach it is that, and I tell people, if you look at the job description, when you're tailoring your CV to the job description, at least make sure that you have experience that aligns to the job description. And if it's 70%, that would be great. At least you're covering the key aspect of the role. But speaking about my personal experience, and this is something that's become a regular, I don't know how it is, maybe in the different places that our joiners and where they are. What I've noticed is that with the advent of AI, I've been having deceptive candidates. What that means is that, so you can easily like put up a CV and it's almost like good to be true. So so I would say, and people will do that, and kind of, because there's a way you can do that. You can just get a job description, copy it, and go on your regular AI chat GPT and all that, and just write, oh, can you draft an ideal candidate profile from this job description? And ChatGPT will bring you the ideal candidate profile. All you just have to do is just maybe copy and paste, or the smart one will look at the candidate's profile and sort of tailor their experiences to the candidate profile. But even in doing that, you have to be very careful, because what I see these days that people even bolding, so they bolding their experience to say, hey, if you cannot see it, you have to see it. I have this experience. So they pretty much just look at your job description and then bolden it, like, I have AI-powered solutions, bolden it. And the moment I see those kind of CV, I just like, okay, yeah. And I take my time to look at them. And most times, you always have these deceptive candidates, and you can tell that it was AI work. So in just with all that Nneka said, in also like practically constructing your CV, that is also very important. Be able to speak the language of the company, and pretty much just, yeah, don't do a lazy work on your CV, I would say.
I love that you talked about the bolding thing, because I mean, the market, this is 2026 is a crazy year. It's a crazy year. 2025 was a crazy year for people. There are people that are like super qualified and just could not even get through the door, like no interviews, and it's not because they're not great. So if you need to scream, like, scream. And I don't blame them. So yeah, clearly the screaming is working, because you tend to spend time looking at their resumes.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Much know it. So I guess you guys take that as a tip. Coming from a global recruiter. I want to switch a little. Let's switch gears a little bit, like, beyond the application and stuff. So, because there are people on here, when they filled out the questionnaires that I put out during the registration, they said they're already in tech and they're thinking about like growing, pivoting, just like up leveling themselves within the organization or even outside. But it's less about like, oh, I don't have a job, I'm looking for a job, but more so like, how can I grow? How can I thrive? I think that's the big word. How can I thrive? And one question I have for you both really is, what, like, from a hiring perspective, there is the question maybe for Felix, since you've been recruiting more recently, around like what makes you, and even Nneka, because you also sit on the panel, even if you've left the recruiting, so you are still an interviewer. What makes you feel confident that a candidate will thrive, not survive? There is like, oh, come and do your job, you can survive, you can keep your head above water. But like the people that would thrive, shine, glow, excel in a global team, not just people that should just get hired because they tick the boxes. What are those? When you say like top performers within an organization have specific traits and skill sets or behaviors that they exhibit beyond the technical competencies. What are those things that you guys have identified?
I No, I was gonna say it's funny that you say the thing about sitting on panels, because I feel like now that I've made the pivot from, talent to people, I'm sure that the recruiters on the team find me really annoying because I'm so nitpicky. And I was like, Nneka, you're a hypocrite, because when you were on the other side, when stakeholders give feedback, you're like, oh no, you're being too hard on talent. Now that you're on the other side, I'm being extremely nitpicky. I think for me, having sat in performance review calibrations, right? So I think in answering this question, I'm thinking about the perspective of recruiting myself, moving to people partnership where I support orgs, and a combination of doing performance review calibrations. I want to say that some of the things that are usually indicators for me are velocity. I know that quality is good, but I think that speed is also great. You need to be able to complement it. When I ask people in interviews to share with me like a project that they've worked on, I'm checking to see how did they unblock themselves, right? Did they proactively seek feedback early? Did they try to reach a consensus? Did they raise their hands to say, oh, this is where I need, collaboration. This is where I need someone to unblock me. I'm looking to see if they have a sense of strong self-management. I think that this is something that I sort of alluded to in the beginning, when I was sharing about my career. In globally distributed teams, there's the thing where you have to have the ability to manage your time, your priorities. Nobody's going to do that for you because you're supposedly a much more autonomous hire, which is why you are remote or in a globally distributed team in the first place. Communication, like we can talk about communication all day. How proactive is your communication? How are you closing the loop? How are you giving, sharing feedback and progress? You don't want to be chased to say, oh, yeah, I said I was going to submit this next week. Can you let me come back next week? I want to see you give progress updates like, oh, FYI, this is where we are. This is where I'm blocked. And I think lastly, just being able to work async, right? Because you're working with people on different time zones, right? So maybe if you use Slack, do you want to start a Slack thread, a multi-DM, a TMP channel? Do you want to start a Google Doc where people are writing async because not everybody will be on the same time zone? Are you following through? Is there like a lot of documentation? So I think when I see signals, that people show a strong sense of autonomy, they show strategic thought leadership, and they exhibit some sort of flexibility from a standpoint of learning, like maximizing the rate of their learning, like iteration. For me, those are usually very good signals. Yeah.
And do you think that Felix, I know you want to talk, but like, let me just ask this follow-up question. Do you think that there are clear differences in these examples and skills that you've highlighted, between an individual contributor and a leader? Because you did say something around thought leadership.
Yes.
Do you have the level of expectation for someone with, I don't know, a 3 to 5 year experience for an individual contributor role?
I think that usually for me, there are baseline skill sets that everyone should, exhibit, which is why when we have level definitions or when we write competency frameworks, most times, let's say that you are a level 2 accountant and you're looking to you're expecting to get promoted. Usually you're assessed based on the next rubric and not necessarily the one that you're currently on. So there's usually like a level of aspiration. So if we're saying someone who is doing public policy and we're saying the baseline is for you to be able to be a compelling communicator. That applies to you whether you're an individual contributor or a manager, but maybe we'll hold you at a higher level because now you are also accountable for people. But I think that there are certain baseline skill sets that everyone should exhibit regardless of whether they are managing people or not. And I think that communication is one of it. Keep in mind that there are also times in your career that you will make a pivot, and maybe you have had experience managing people, but you pivot and you become an individual contributor. You're not managing people, but you're managing processes. You probably even have more impact. So there's usually the thing where, being an individual contributor may even be more impactful than leading people. And for that reason, having certain skill sets and competencies are important.
Amazing. Felix, do you want to share any additional thoughts?
Just quick one. I think it's close to autonomy as I would say ownership. Exhibit ownership that you can handle something from top to bottom. I would also say visibility. at some point. You need to be visible, whether it's by, always showing up when you're supposed to. And the last part I was going to mention is if you're looking to move to another or move up, then you might as well start talking about that place already, whether it's identifying a particular problem that you have created a solution for. And just, I think we're in the world right now where it's about what you can do, like practicality. Show me some real world solution and not just, oh, what I can do. Go ahead and do it and bring forth the solution. And I think that would stand out for you in moving to a new role.
I love that. So now we've highlighted these skills and the traits / behaviors that people ultimately will need to exhibit or demonstrate before they can, up level or get to the next role or just thrive, basically. So now for anyone on the call who is listening and thinking, okay, so I know these things, you said these things, but what practical moves can someone make, say, in the next, 6 to 12 months to position themselves for bigger or more global roles in tech? Now, this could be people, and this is even beyond tech, because I think all the things we talk about here are applicable to anyone, even if you're in, maybe not civil service, but like you could be there, you could get, some value from this, but like it applies to anyone and everyone. So I guess, what I'm essentially saying is people that feel like, I don't think I'm there yet, but I would absolutely love to get there. What are the things that they can actually start to do? Because it's one thing to like name these skills, name these behaviors. What can they do to help themselves get to that next level, such that when the promotion opportunity comes, it doesn't, they don't get passed by. They are ready for it and they can defend that. So that would be my question. It's a bit of a deep one, but like, would really love to hear your thoughts.
I think when I mentor people and I coach people, I usually say that, as much as possible, try to learn and unlearn, right? And I think that there's a lot of, knowledge in between learning and unlearning. So I think fundamentally, you want to make sure that you are broadening your knowledge. And it's not just, oh, let me go read and all of that. It could be in small things, right? Are you having conversations cross-functionally? So let's say that you are in a people team where like the makeup of the people team is maybe talent, L&D, people partnership, payroll. I think that one way that you can upskill or broaden your scope or deepen your business acumen is to start, cross-functionally collaborating, right? Maybe do you want to have one-on-ones with someone that does L&D? Do you want to maybe shadow some of the meetings, some team meetings? Do you maybe want to go to the all hands of some of those teams just to deepen your business acumen? Do you want to ask someone in an org that you're interested in to mentor you? If you are in a company where, they do rotation programs, we do rotation programs at Wave where you can be embedded in a team for like 3 months. That's like usually a very great opportunity for you to, upskill. If you eventually, it might not even be that you want to transition eventually, but you would just gain a lot of insight. And I also say that if it's that you are in pursuit of opportunities outside of your current company, then definitely start applying. There's just something that interviewing for, again, just to be clear, not that you become a serial interviewer, just chasing all sorts of roles, but there's something about interviewing for some roles, even when you don't think that you're extremely qualified. It just sort of prepares you, sharpens your acumen. And, in having those conversations, you start to prepare yourself. You might not necessarily be a fit, but eventually as you interview for those roles, make iterations, you can get into those roles. You can probably also start slightly more junior. You can also do lateral moves. Sometimes to get to where you're headed, it might not necessarily be an up level. It might be a lateral move before you then eventually like make a pivot. So just to recap, engaging in a lot of conversations, curiosity, asking questions, maybe finding a mentor in that area where you are interested in, interviewing for roles. Obviously, reading is always, is always important. But I think those are in summary, those are the things that I would do if I wanted to. And shadowing people, right? When we hire for certain roles, we don't necessarily throw the people into the deep. We ask them to shadow. Some of the engineers in our company, they shadow some teams and they say, okay, this is where I think that I'm the best fit. So I think shadowing, having conversations, asking for mentorship, a bit of coaching, I think usually is the way to go.
I love that. And I think one thing that you said that I quite like is even if you're not ready yet, like apply and potentially interview for opportunities, because there is no better place to be than applying to jobs from a place of like no desperation. If that
Correct.
makes
Yeah.
like all that it must get reach out a lot of times, and then there are actually people who say no. Oh, I'm not looking to move now. I'm not keen to talk. Like it blows my mind that people say no, because even me, that I'm not looking for a job, I have conversations. I'm just being honest. Like, and I have conversations. I'm picky about who I speak to, yeah, but like I have conversations. I never shut that door. And sometimes it's not about that role today, it's about that relationship with that agency or that recruiter. Because if there's a role in a year's time when when we're actually ready and you're ready to make that move, that's someone you can reach out to. That's like your social capital is so important. Like beyond, and this is my 2 cents. So beyond the work of like learn this, learn that, shadow this, shadow that, there is a big aspect of social capital and just networking, both internally and externally. So I would say like externally, speak to people, learn about other organizations. Like don't stay in that bubble of like, oh, I've been here 10 years, they love me, I've built because I actually do hear people say like, they trust me, I don't want to go to a new company where I have to start you trust to get out. Like this is like, you're just, let's not do that in 2026. That's all I'm going to be saying. And then the other bit around social capital internally is when you know that you're looking to make a move. Some people would say, oh, I don't want to play politics. Like, what is politics essentially? It's really about the power dynamics within an organization. If you do choose to do the negative bit of it, then that's on you. There are positive politics, I like to say. I don't even like to use the word politics, but like essentially, building that relationship internally is super important because you need people that can advocate for you behind closed doors. You want to like be this next level, start to spend time with people who are already at that next level internally within the organization. That's always my thing, like beyond the learning, beyond the skills, because I've seen people who have these skill sets, these traits and these behaviors, but no one is advocating for them. They're not advocating for themselves. So they still get passed up on this opportunity. So I love that you did mention that because it just sparked my brain a little bit. Felix, I'm sure your mouth is like ready to go. Yeah.
Not quite. I think Nneka did a wonderful job, like mentioning everything that whoever needs to upskill needs to do practical things. I want to look at a different direction. If you are, I think most of the things Nneka mentioned was if you're within an organization already and you want to upskill, if I'm correct. But I want to look at, and I think you touched a little bit about it, if you are looking to move to another company or you're looking for a new job. The truth is, it's no longer a volume game. The days of, oh, I need to do 100 applications a day and then you're cutting it, that has gone with 2025. 2026 is more of a precision game. And we keep talking about this precision because it keeps coming up. And what I mean by that is if you know that you're going to be moving or you're looking to move, don't start immediately. Just wake up and say, oh, I'm planning to move. Already in a couple of months, there are certain things that you can start doing that would position you to kind of get the job that you want. And I think Jess mentioned something about networking, and I always call it an insight first kind of reach out. And what I mean is that obviously you reach out to recruiters, but the regular way of reaching out, you could see people reach out to you and say, oh, are you hiring? Or I've been following your company. Or, oh, I have this experience. People kind of reach out and say, oh, I have this experience. I want to see how it can benefit your company. Scratch that. You want to come with insights, basically saying that you've been following this company. So what I would typically tell people is that if it's going to take you a month, look at maybe the kind of companies that you want to work with. You know exactly the kind of companies you want. If it's 20 of them, go through their job description, find a common element in the job description, and see if there's anything that you've done regarding that. If there's nothing, start working on that. And so that you're already preparing yourself to be the person that they need. Also comes to understanding the business skill. Now, going back to the network part, you want to try saying, hey, I've been following your company and I noticed that maybe there's a potential, maybe project or maybe optimization, something specific that you could tell the recruiter, and you're basically speaking their language, and you could just say, oh, I have drafted something. And then obviously there's no recruiter that will see that wouldn't want to like take a second look and say, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense, because one, you've done your research and you're offering real-time solutions. So pretty much it's not a 2-week thing. It's not oh, I see a job description, you just throw your CV. If I apply 100 CVs per day, that does not work again. So you are being precise, and that's what recruiters are looking for now. We're not just looking for example, just a Java developer. We're looking for a Java developer that has this skill and that can benefit us in a particular way. And you also have to look at creating your job description to describe what you can offer that is related to the company. Yeah, I think I will just leave it at that in terms of what you can do going forward.
I love that. That is such a fresh perspective. And I think also, or someone just said, tested and trusted advice. This was how I landed my interview at Meta. Amazing. See, love it. I was even going to say that, what you've literally just said is no more lazy application.
Oh.
This is not the year for laziness. This is not the year for volume, to be honest. Like, I think there are still people who believe it's a volume game. And I think in some industries, yeah, to an extent, it could still be a volume game. But I think ultimately, if you do want to strategically land something, you have to be strategic yourself. So I love the bit around research, like just actually putting in the work. It's like thinking about this as a KPI for yourself. Just sweating blood and sweat for your organization at the moment, like sweat for yourself, so you can land yourself the right role. So I love that perspective. Guys, we are moving very slowly now into Q&A. I'm going to ask them just one more question. So please start to gather your questions. You'd be able to come off mute. We'd love to see your faces because everyone's camera is turned off. So, but no pressure. If you feel comfortable, please turn on your camera, or you can also ask questions in chat, and I'll make sure that I read them. So my last question for these wonderful people is: if you were to look for a job today, right now in 2026, with the era of AI and all of that, what would be the first 2 things that you would do? Nneka, especially you, because you've not even moved. You've been in the company for 6 years. What would you do to move?
Are you sure I'm the right person to ask that question?
Actually, yeah, you are exactly the right person to ask.
Oh Lord, I think that sometimes, when someone has been at a company for a really long time, it's a two-edged sword, right? There's the part where it's like, oh, they are very stable, they are consistent, but there's also the thing where you are slightly wary. Are they rusty? Because it means that all of the things that I've been, obviously I've been deepening my impact, broadening my knowledge, but I've been literally been in the same company. So there are 2 ways to look at it. There are 2 angles I could approach it from the angle of, I have evolved and deepened my impact, and I want to make sure that this is reflected in my resume. So I'm very big on storytelling. I want to be able to tell, in writing a resume. I don't have an updated resume, but in updating my resume, a couple of things I want to show is I want to be able to explain, show clarity, show that I've been able to demonstrate ownership, impact, how did I close the loop? When it comes to the career that I've had, it's interesting because I've spent most of my time in TA. But sometimes even people who have done TA, they go to interviews and they flop. And so you want to come across it from a position of self-awareness. I actually had a conversation over a year ago, just for the sake of it. And I realized that, one thing that the recruiter wanted to see from me was my level of self-awareness, right? For the projects that I worked on, what was my level of execution, right? And how was I able to communicate? And so if I wanted to interview for a new role, I'm not sure when, obviously, I will make sure that some of the work that I've done, or most of the work that I've done, that I show some degree of consistency. The people that I managed, how did I turn things around? I've also, been spending a lot of time in coaching and mentoring people. You also want to be able to demonstrate that you're someone who is also teachable, who have been able to learn and unlearn. Again, remember that I've been in the same company for so long. And so you want to be able to reflect your ability to iterate, right? What do you do with new information? Some level of flexibility. Okay, so again, I still think that I'm probably not the best person to answer this question, but yeah.
But you have answered the question.
Exactly. No one is like, I feel like everyone is the best person because moves can happen at any given time.
Yeah.
I believe in planning, but also just like being spontaneous sometimes. So you never know, right?
Yeah.
Like I could play this video for you next year and you see that you're in a different company. Like life just happens, isn't it?
This is a setup.
I mean, if there's any wave person here, I'm not setting that up. I'm just speaking, okay? Felix, would you have a different approach as someone who you've moved recently? You're also, very much working with AI at the moment. You're seeing a lot of like fraudulent candidates because my team is experiencing that as well. There are people who have the best resume ever and they show up and they're not the person that we saw on LinkedIn. So it's actually getting to that level of, as in there's a serious level of fraud happening right now with AI. So even to your point earlier around, like, it's not a hustle for, talent anymore, because I mean, it is a hustle for talent, but not in the way that people used to know it. There's a lot of talent. The market is saturated. There's redundancies left, right, and center. But essentially, it's getting even more difficult to assess and identify the right talents. So you find some companies like increasing their interview process, being a lot more strict around that. So I guess, just falling back to that, because considering how tight it is today, as someone who is a recruiter, you are seeing all sorts of things, life can happen. You could be looking for a job tomorrow or just want to see what's out there. What would be your strategies outside of what Nneka has shared?
I would say you definitely have to optimize your online presence, and precisely ensuring that your skills intelligence is seen, because it's part of the precision. We're not just you need to be able to say, oh, this is who you are and this is what you do and this is the effect of what you do. And so you need to be able to highlight that, and that's what I'm going to do. I've found that most CVs now, they just don't, gone are the days where you just say, oh, I led 3 people, or I led an amazing team of 3 people. What did those 3 people do? What did you learn from it? Or how does that add value to maybe the company that you're applying to? So I would say, obviously, as I mentioned, do a lot of research on the different companies. I would, there are different tools now. You do your market intelligence and say, these are the kind of companies that I want to work with. Look at their job description. And then, as I mentioned earlier, copy this job description, everyone has access to ChatGPT, just draft an ideal candidate profile for this job description. ChatGPT will give you like the core skills that are needed based off of the job description. And all you have to do is look at your experience and sort of see where there's an alignment. And if there's no alignment, you can also see where you're lacking. And if it's a skill that you can quickly ramp up, then by all means do it. So it's not a 2-week thing. It's not a 1-week thing. You need to be dedicated. It has to be like a project, because you're setting yourself up for the recruiter. You're telling yourself, and that's what I always tell myself, when I show up, the recruiter has no choice but to speak to me, because I have done my work and I put in my work, and that's the mindset I will bring into looking for a job search at this moment. So just to recap, optimize your online presence, showing your skill intelligence, saying this is who you are, this is what I've done, this is what I'm doing, and this is the result, and this is how it can add value to your business, speaking the language of the business, and then leverage AI to kind of tailor your CV to match what the job description is looking for, I would say.
Amazing. I love that. AI is our friend, not our enemy. So
Mm.
use as much as you can is what I'd say. But use it the right way. Okay, guys, the floor is now open to questions. I prepped you guys that Q&A is coming soon. So please, this is the time for you to come off mute, put your questions in the chat. These amazing people, including myself, we're here to help and answer you. Even if you feel like your case is personal, share it. We're here for it.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome, Rina. Thank you for joining as well. And you can raise your hands as well, just so if there's, a number of people who have questions, we're able to at least go through the list if possible. Yeah, this is really your time. Yes, Rhoda, you can come off mute.
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. And thank you for the session so far. Sorry, I won't be able to turn on my camera. Yeah,
That's
so that's
okay.
it. Doesn't look too good. So I think my question is for Nneka. So I think similar to you as well, I'm making a similar move, moving from talent to people ops. But I wouldn't. So I think the way it's structured is I would still be overseeing talent as well. So pretty much doing both. And I think my question is based on your experience, what were some of those skills as a recruiter that really helped you excel in that people and culture role that you moved into?
That's a really good question. And congrats. I feel like I'm echoing. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Some of the things that helped me, I didn't know this, but when, it was time to make the move, and I sat down and I wrote up, these are some of the competencies and strengths that I have. It became apparent to me that, I had picked up on the skills. I have a cheat code for people who want to succeed in people roles. Do TA first, without a shadow of doubt. TA is the baseline for you to succeed in any form of, great. If you want to do L&D, you can say, oh, it's slightly different. But I think that, again, you can say that I'm being biased because I had done TA predominantly. But I think that TA is the baseline for success. If you have a TA background, you are more likely to excel in any people ops. First of all, I realized that in doing recruiting, I was building relationships, right? And I was deepening my business acumen, because you will do this by default in hiring, right? But I also tried to maintain those relationships. I would check in on people that I had hired. I would do like 3-month check-ins to say, oh, how are you doing? How are you adjusting? Is there anything that has surprised you about this role? Obviously, selfishly to get feedback from recruiting, but also to make sure that these people are having like a great experience, and obviously cascade that feedback or escalate it. I was curious about the level definitions of the people that I was hiring. If a hiring manager has told me that they were going to hire someone at a level 4, after they hire the person, best believe that I was going to be snooping around to ask them, how is that person doing? Are they still at the level do you think that they are at the level that you hired them? If you wanted to hire for this role again, would you hire for that role again? Selfishly, again, because compensation and benefit was something that would always block talent, I inserted myself into comp and ben. Like, I want to ask questions. How are we benchmarking for certain roles? Because I knew that it was going to block my team if I didn't unblock them on compensation. So I was very curious about how we're benchmarking salaries. What are our benefits? What are we adding to make it more generous and juicy for people? I was also very interested in organizational design, because obviously you're hiring people. Where are they going to fit? Okay, you said you want me to hire an accountant level 1, but you already have an accountant level 1. So you said, do you plan to promote? Do you want to build a team of more junior, finance generalist, asking a lot of questions. I was also having a lot of follow-ups as well. So most people, sometimes some recruiters, they hire and they're like, oh, it's done, but I try to do check-ins. And so when I made the pivot, it just felt like an extension of some of the work I had already been doing, right? I started to build like a lot of stakeholder collaboration, asking for a lot of feedback. By default, we had like surveys that hiring managers would do when they have finished hiring, so I would then follow up to say, oh, I wanted to follow up what worked, what didn't work, the quality of of talent. It's a long list, but I hope that the summary is somewhat helpful for you.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Any more questions, guys? Feel free to raise your hands or come off mute. I did see that Muinat wrote in the comments, I'd like to share my CV with you to pass along within your network. While I don't have a background in tech, I'm eager to make a transition into the field. Can I use this as a teachable moment, not just to Muinat, but everyone? You see, when we talked about, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, we're just here to learn, isn't it? You see, when Felix talked about like the research and all that hard work that now goes into hiring, these are some of the things that we don't want to do in 2026. Because when I'll tell you categorically, and I'm sure Felix and Nneka can relate to this, when people reach out to recruiters generally and they say, here's my CV, I'm looking for a new role in case you see anything that comes up. Like, show of hands if you actually remember that. So there's no hand, meaning that it's not, but we don't remember. And it's not because we don't want to help you. It's more so we need to see a lot more proactivity that makes you register here. So when people, and we get this all the time, like those are the emails I don't know how to respond to, because I'm like, am I going to go on my website to go look for a job for you? Isn't that something you should proactively do and then see, oh, is there a fit here? Oh, Nneka talked about working at Wave. Maybe it's time to go check out if there's any opportunity in Wave and see where your skill set could align. So I'm using this as a teachable moment because I feel like people still do this. Not like it's the worst thing to do. It's just not going to help your course. You know what I mean? Like it's just not going to help what you're trying to achieve. And that's why I'm calling it out. The second thing I'll call out here is also, whilst you don't have a background in tech, it doesn't matter. I mean, three of us here actually on this call, we started our careers in agency, like
Correct.
to be on the agency side. We used to hire for anyone and everyone. I hired for banks, I hired for schools, I hired teachers, I hired everyone and anyone that wanted to be hired. As long as the company could pay us, we're there. I've hired for oil and gas before we finally made that break into tech. So whilst there are some very great transferable skills that came from us, because we had that hustle mentality, and tech of that time, we're talking almost a decade ago now, wanted us basically. We were exactly that for them, but that's changed. So do not feel limited because you don't have a tech background or you haven't worked in tech. There are certain roles, I'll tell you categorically. I don't know your background, Moina, so I don't know if you studied anything in school or what your experience is in. But I'll tell you for free that tech companies are not always looking for people that have tech experience or experience working in tech companies. When I'm hiring for finance, I don't care if you come from tech. I hire from KPMG, I hire from Ernst & Young, I hire from anywhere, as long as you have that experience. So there are some roles that, yes, it makes a lot more sense to bring them in from a similar industry because, based on the work they've been doing, it's just easier for them to transition. It's just easier for them to align and add value and make impact quickly. And there are some other roles where it doesn't matter. So don't let this limit you, even if you don't have a background in tech. And I'd also say, even when you do decide to reach out to people, do not pinpoint the things that you think will not work in your favor. Like, I don't have, like any negative tone, take it out. Like, don't use it. Like, here's what I've done. Here's what I can do. Here's what I'm looking for. Focus on the parts that make you glow and shine like a halo on your head, okay? So I'm just here to say, if anyone else, is trying to like send their CV to people, we may be kind enough to say, oh yes, send it to me, it's fine, I'll give you my email address, okay? But it's probably gonna stay there for some time. So that would be my feedback. And I hope that is helpful, Moina. It was a good example just to illustrate, but it's not about Moina as a person, it's about anyone who might be trying to do this, okay? Agricultural economics, that's a very interesting background. And I can see you being in, when we say tech, yeah? Tech is not software engineering tech alone. There's fintech, there's agro tech, there's edu tech, there's meditech, there's...
I read agric, so yeah.
Exactly, Felix read agric. Oh, we should talk about BSCs, right? Like, so it doesn't matter. You are going to get an opportunity regardless. You just have to be, like we talked about earlier, be very strategic about how you position yourself, okay? Amazing. Dorcas, you can come off mute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jess. First of all, I should say I'm really, really. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So I want to say I've really learned a lot from this particular meeting. It's been very enlightening because I have also applied for certain jobs and I've always wondered what goes through the mind of recruiters. Like, why are they um as you know why how do some people get interviews and others don't? How do they scrutinize certain CV? So it was really enlightening. This is like seeing through the eyes of a recruiter, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. But so I'm a product manager and I have mainly been with agri-tech, currently with agri-tech, and I've been wanting to move to fintech, right? I've had some little experience with fintech. It wasn't so much, probably less than a year, but most of my time has been with agri-tech. So moving to fintech, I have also joined certain product managers groups just to learn from other product managers who are already in fintech. I've also joined, I have some online courses, but I'm very concerned about what I may miss if, assuming I want to apply for a fintech product management role, because I feel most of what I'm doing is more theoretical and not, I don't have much practical experience with it, with being a product manager in fintech. So my question is, what can I do to bridge that gap? Is there anything that I could do aside the theory and the networking to just help me move into fintech? Yeah.
Who wants to take this next? Uh-oh. I feel like when then we just hear some feedback. Who wants to take this? Felix Nneka?
I could take some of it.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Then I'll chime in for sure.
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you, Dorcas. I think that given your level of experience, you probably want to start with exploring like associate product manager roles first, or maybe product analyst roles first, or even project. So there's a way to think about products, right? It's not necessarily that you dive in and you become an entire product owner. There are roles where you can actually get in as an associate and maybe shadow a bit. I'm going to speak from an experience of someone who has hired a ton of product managers. When we're hiring product managers, we are looking to see their alignment with the company values. You cannot manage a product that you are not aligned to what. Just to be clear, the technical expertise, your experiential knowledge, the theoretical knowledge that you speak of, they are extremely important. So you already have that, and that counts. But if you are looking for certain roles, let's say that you are looking to hire to get into a company where there's is very high impact. Maybe they are looking to let's say they are looking to get into a fintech, and maybe their goal or their mission, like the company where I work, is to make Africa a cashless continent. And that is like a value that resonates with you. Maybe it's an experience that you have even lived yourself, right? I think that for starters, in having an interview, you are able to demonstrate that cultural alignment. Again, notice that I'm trying to not focus on the technical skills that you have. As a product manager, if I'm interviewing a product manager, I want to see an indication that they have a sense of strong self-management, because only then can you manage a product and possibly even manage engineers, depending on the type of company that you work for, right? I want to see how you have been able to demonstrate proactive communication. How do you sort of close the loop? How are you showing confidence that is also backed with execution? So it doesn't necessarily matter that you haven't done product management in a very experiential way before, but I think that there is a way that you can navigate a conversation, even though the experience you've had is theoretical. And I will be convinced that you are autonomous, you are mission aligned, you are someone who demonstrates proactivity. You can upskill relatively quickly. You can iterate, because product management also requires a lot of iteration. How are you updating your thinking? So you're not basically, you launch a product, it doesn't make sense. We have to crush everything and start over. So I'm looking for a level of iteration, which is also an indication for me on how you maximize your rate of learning. So I think for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, from what I'm taking away, you already have this skill set. I think you just need to balance it with some elements of interpersonal skill, demonstration of execution, autonomy, iteration, and I think you'll be able to get in. You might want to explore much more product analyst roles, but let it be in companies where the product deeply resonates with you. There's a very glaring difference with product managers who are working on products that they like and they love, and people who are just working on it because it's just a job. I think that's for me is a very great indication.
Yeah. And before I go to Felix, Dorcas, I just wanted you to clarify, have you already moved into the fintech company, or is that something you are looking to do? Because I feel like I missed that bit, especially
Okay, I haven't moved into it. It's something I'm
You have?
looking at. No, I haven't.
Okay.
Felix, do you want to add any additional thoughts?
I think I'll just talk on the practical aspect. Everything Nneka said, very valid. But just to add the practical layer to it, if you're looking to move from agri-tech, again, the skills are related, but then the industries are sort of different because fintech is like fast-moving industry. And it's about payment, it's about APIs and all of that. So I would say on the practical side, you need to familiarize yourself with how this sort of companies work. Companies that are like very much into the fintech, whether it's, yeah, you can always Google up companies in the fintech, how they work, be able to speak the language. I keep bringing this up. So if it means for you to give yourself some time, or if it's like some certifications that you need to do, or some learnings sessions that you need to take up, that would be great, because it's about speed, it's about reliability, because if something breaks in fintech, a whole lot of things will suffer. So that as a product manager, you need to have that mindset. You need to understand how to design secure and reliable systems. So just having that mindset that everything is like high growth, high impact would also help. And so, yeah, practical sense, familiarize yourself with all the basic knowledge that goes into fintech. And when it comes to the personal skill, I think you already have that as a PM in agri tech, which are quite transferable.
Amazing. Abigail, before we come to you, quick question just to like clarify for anyone else who is in Dorcas' situation. For you guys who've hired product managers, does it really matter what industry they come from? Like in your shortlisting criteria, is that even a thing?
For specific project, yes. For specific, like payment is a no-go. Payment is very, how do I put it? It's very volatile.
Yeah.
So it gets to a point that sometimes we are specific about the PM that we want to get. Like we are specific about the company that the PM should come from. So it's not just even looking at, oh, it's a PM in fintech. We're saying, oh, it would be great if we have a PM from this particular organization because they can plug in seamless to what we're trying to do. So that's what PM, that's the interesting part about product manager, so that they can quickly, you want to get someone that can quickly plug in and understands the landscape and then just fly with it and then be able to bring up ideas.
That's helpful. Nneka, did you want to say anything? I saw your mouth move, so I wasn't sure.
You're muted.
Good.
I was going to say that similar to Felix, for certain teams, yes, if I was hiring a product manager for the payment team, I absolutely would want someone who has been in the payment space. But if I were hiring a product manager for the finance team, I don't really care. Yeah.
So there's that flexibility. Just wanted to put that out there. Okay, Abigail, we can come to you now. Please feel free to come up.
Okay, thank you. Hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
Great. Thank you very much. I actually came here to see Nneka. Yes. Yes. I interviewed with Wave the latter part of last year for a product manager role. And I made it to the fourth, I think it was the sixth stage. I made it to the fourth stage. It was a 3-hour live case study. And that was very life changing for me. I've never been in such a situation before. People literally reading into your thoughts with your camera showing. But I got very, very good insights from the feedback shared by my recruiter. Now, my question is, I want to understand if there are levels to product managers working at Wave. If you have any insights to that, that would really be helpful.
Who was your recruiter, out of curiosity?
Dominic.
I have to pass
Yeah.
along feedback that you thought that, okay. So first of all, thank you very much for for joining us. Incidentally, I have people at Wave on this call, so I hope, yeah. I'm glad that you interviewed at Wave. Yes, sometimes the interview process for product managers can be a bit, I don't want to use the word rigorous because that sounds a bit, but yes. One thing I have to say is that you absolutely should be able to interview again. There is an reapplication. Yes, at Wave, that you can absolutely re-interview after 6 months or 1 year, depending on the specific team. And I think that, if you've come this far, there's also a likelihood that you might be reconsidered. I think not that I think at Wave, there are levels of product. There are absolutely levels of product management at Wave. There are product managers who have to manage very complex teams, similar to what we're saying that, if I were hiring a product manager for payments, I would absolutely look for someone who has been in that space so that they can plug and play. You would also be responsible for managing engineers as well. So we're not just looking for your technical fit, or if you have been in that industry, we also want to see you demonstrate some capability for leadership. So you're thinking through how to appraise engineers, how to help them upskill, how are you helping, engineers with their product thinking. So that level of leadership. So a product manager at Wave is so powerful that they actually also sort of spin up or upskill engineering managers. That's how much value we place on product managers. But we do have associate product managers who are very promising, but we don't think that they are autonomous enough to maybe own a specific product or team themselves. So they might shadow a much more senior product manager and maybe do some form of rotation. So all this to say that if you wanted to reconsider, there's an opportunity that will open up soon for associate product managers at Wave. Reach out to me afterwards if you want to continue.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I also wanted to say something to Dorcas. Dorcas, the thing about being a product manager, even if you're not focused on a fintech product, fintech is everywhere, because at the end of the day, the consumers you're serving with your agri-tech product, you need to pay them. At the end of the day, you need to still make revenue. So that is where the fintech experience comes in. I remember before I moved into fintech, I was working on an e-commerce product. We're serving customers to the point where wherever they find themselves, they can be able to buy for any products within their location, right? And this means customers need to pay to get those products to be delivered to them. So you see where the fintech integration comes in. I had to work with the PMs or the teams working on the fintech product, able to plug that into my product. So if you are still working with your agri-tech company, you should find the team working to integrate payment into your system where you're able to collect payment from, say, the farmers, or vice versa, processing payments to them as well. I hope that's clear. Fintech is everywhere, even mobility. They still need to make money. They would plug in Paystack or which other fintech platform to collect these payments.
Spoken by a true PM.
Exactly. I love this. This is what we're here for. Thank you so much, Abigail, for sharing. Felicitas, you can come off mute to ask your question.
Hi. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's actually Ihom. I don't mind Felicitas.
You think I didn't know?
Hi guys. So I have a question. I think my question also includes Abigail. I think she's the PM person. May or may not have been answered because I was briefly away. So I have a recruiting background, like you guys already know. Most of you have been my manager, so you know this. I'm at a point where I'm now fed up of recruiting, but I still want to be in recruiting. But what I want to do differently is I want to pivot to like a product side, but specifically for recruiting softwares. So things like ATSs. I currently work in a company where we have a good ATS, but there are just a lot of gaps and things that I feel like this ATS should be able to do. So I'm looking at kind of moving to a company, not a company, to a role where, or perhaps in future, a company where, they would be looking for recruiters who have worked with ATSs, know the gaps, know what a good 2028 or 2027 or 2020, you know what I mean, ATS should look like in modern day. So this is something I'm looking to do, and to all your advices, like honing those skills and building those capabilities for the future. But I'm at the point where I don't know if I also need to build technical capabilities. I'm not very good at maths. I cannot do anything coding. But maybe my question is, what are some transferable skills that I have right now as a recruiter that would probably be beneficial to me in this role if I eventually move? And maybe to Abigail, do you think I still need to be a technical product manager in the sense of being very hands-on, or my experience as a recruiter would be sufficient to take me into this role?
Can I quickly just share? I think you being a recruiter already puts you at a good entry point, in that you use this ATS, and so you can pretty much from a recruiter standpoint be able to say, hey, this does not make sense, or this is not working. So what I would say, again, I'll leave it to the PM and on the call. But from my standpoint, I would say from now, start document the things that you've seen that you think, oh, this should work better. And I think, again, you can always leverage resources around you. If it's AI, and start building competency in certain areas if you've documented the different aspects that you think might need some changes, so that you're already forming your portfolio, so you know exactly what to work. And you're not only focusing on one ATS. You can go as far as looking at all the different ATS, what's the commonality in them, and start having those conversations on those. In your current company, you could also, I don't know if you have like a talent capability team, they also focus on those kind of topics. So that could be a good way, a segue to start. Like you're already working on ATS, you're understanding how the ATS work before you can pivot into a full-time PM while still earning your skills. That would be my 2 cents.
Thanks, Felix. And before we go to Abigail, I was going to say that, so at the moment, I don't know if you guys as recruiters get some reach out. So even I personally, I don't have an interest in product management, by the way. But personally, I get reach out to a lot to look at people's MVPs from a recruiter's perspective. So I've looked at a bunch of people who are like looking to build ATS. They come and show me like, the version 1, version 2, like I walk with them through that journey. So we're looking at it from a user experience because we know what makes sense, So I just want to call out that you are already well positioned, okay? Because you know exactly the type of tools that, what makes our lives easier, what would make the hiring experience easier, what are the things that we've lacked. And you've worked with several different ATSs because you've been a recruiter for over a decade as well. So you know what is lacking, even with the invention of AI and all of that. So I think first off, you're well positioned because you already understand that product. I think that's one. The other piece I was going to note is beyond the technical aspects, which I think Abigail can speak to, there are certain aspects of being a product manager that are more soft skill related. And so many skills I can think of from a recruiter's perspective, things like stakeholder management, right? Things like if I think about stakeholder management, we're thinking candidate side, hiring manager side, so I can definitely see, you managing like a wide range of stakeholders, engineers, designers, because you've done that in your hiring. You've hired technical side, you've hired non-tech. So there's that. And I think one thing that recruiters tend to shine very well in is communication. If you're a recruiter and you have poor communication skills, you are a poor recruiter. It's as simple as that. So because you have that experience and that capability, that already puts you in a very good bracket when it comes to being a good product manager. I can go on and on. I can think about things like negotiation and persuasion, because that's what comes to being a product manager as well. Problem solving, critical thinking. We think on the spot daily as recruiters. There's organizational and time management skills. You don't have a choice. You're juggling 30 recs at the same time. So there's a long list of skills that you already possess from a non-technical perspective compared to product manager. And I think you need to start to document that and understand, okay, what skills do I leverage on a day-to-day in my job that can first be easily transferred without me needing to learn first. I think understand what you have at the moment and where and how you can transfer those skill sets. There's like the customer thinking, we do that all the time. What do our candidates want? You are negotiating between hiring manager and kind of like, oh, they said they want 140 grand. Oh, we're thinking you're doing that all the time, like in your sleep. So think about those things you already possess and then think about your gaps and what can I learn to make me even attractive to a recruiter or an organization, even at the most junior level of PM. So I think that's what my advice would be. Then we can pass it on to Abigail if she wanted to give any thoughts, but I know that she already shared someone's name on in the chat as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention that Joel actually has your background. He comes from a recruiting background and he transitioned to product management. So you can look him up on LinkedIn, and I mean, you can actually even shoot him a DM. He's actually a very good person you can relate with in terms of
I have to
transitioning into
I have to say that Joel used to be at Wave for what it's worth, reported
exact.
to my
I even
team.
forgot that. Yes. So yeah, actually, it's a very good resource. So you can look him up. He also has a product called Career Wheel. I'm not sure if it's live, but you can look it up right now as we're speaking and hit him up on LinkedIn.
Okay. Thank you, Abigail.
Thank you. Iham, I hope that was helpful. And you have a good idea of what your next steps could look like as you think about your career long term. All right, guys, any more questions? I don't see any more hands up, but if you do have a question, we're happy to answer. So feel free to come off mute or raise your hand or put it in the chat. So give it a couple of minutes, but we're literally nearing the end of this session. I think it's been amazing, but want to make sure there's no one who's shy on here. If you're shy, like we're very nice people, come off mute. Don't be shy. Okay. Are we okay with awkward silence? If there if there are no more questions, I just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And, special thanks to Nneka and Felix. I do have one last final question for them to wrap up. This session for us, but I just want to say thank you for everyone who stayed from beginning to end. I know a couple of people were pinging me to say, oh, their network or something happened, and I had to send them the link again. But thank you for staying on. Thank you for coming back if you had to jump off. I really hope that this has been very insightful session for you. I've learned a lot as well, so it's been great hosting this session. So Nneka and Felix, if I guess this is like when you say last words. So last words for people, and this one I want to talk about, is this a question? as much as the last word. I don't want it to be like inspirational because no one really cares about that. They want practical responses, okay? So my last question for you both is, what are some of the things that people don't know? Like, I think Dorcas or someone or someone has said they now have an insight into what happens behind the scene. But I feel like we didn't even touch on that as much. So answer this last question for me. When people apply to a role and they don't hear back, even if they truly are qualified for that job, what could be some of the reasons why that is? Beyond the things we've talked about, beyond precision, beyond speaking the company's language, let's say they ticked all those boxes, they were precise. They told so many stories in their resume. The resume has never been clearer in this life. Yeah, they ticked all the boxes. What are some of those odd reasons that people will never know about and they just judge the organization for?
I think for me, reasons why you might never hear back from me. I mean, obviously you're gonna get the rejection email, not to say that you will not be properly communicated to. Maybe let me stack rank. Big brand names with very shallow impact. I think some candidates, when they interview, they are not able to demonstrate the impact. It's great that they have worked in a very exceptional organization, but I also want you to demonstrate the impact of the work that you have done. So the big brand that you've worked for, that's great, but I also want to learn about you. I want to see your level of execution. Maybe I've probably said execution multiple times, but I don't want very, very polished answers. Polish is great, but some substance is probably.
Just to clarify, we're not talking interviews, we're talking application. They did not even get shortlisted. They didn't make it to the recruiter screen.
Yeah,
Oh,
so let me just clarify, so we don't waste your time answering the wrong question.
I was gonna also say that, yeah, I think we were talking about applications, not interviews. Having said that, what a tough question.
Question actually.
I would say, again, it could just be that the hiring manager says, for example, maybe we do not have the budget, especially if people are applying from like a different location to relocate people. So those could be nuances. It could be that the hiring manager is looking for something specific, maybe some specific words in their CV, which at the time of the application we may not know, because hiring managers can be very interesting set of people. I say that with all sense of exactly. So it could be that they change their mind, and what else? I think so.
Your mind's thinking a little bit, because Nneka, do you have additional thoughts now? Because
I actually feel like so they're saying this practically. There are times that I probably want someone who has been in a startup environment. So been in a big org, I'm slightly worried that maybe you are not into the nitty-gritty or you are not scrappy. So you have been at organizations where everything is laid out and set out in front of you. Whereas, because we're a growing fintech, we want people who are very scrappy, managers who are also able to get into the weeds of things. So most times we will tend not to, for certain roles where scrap is required, we might say, okay, this is great, but we would rather someone who has built from the ground up. So
I like that. Yeah, I think that's the thing. Because if you have people that come from, it's like sometimes when I'm hiring in tech and I see you've come from extremely structured environments.
Yeah.
If it's in finance and specific teams, that they would always be very structured regardless of where they find themselves, because that's just the nature of their roles. Like there are some teams some companies where they don't even have KPIs, they're so scrappy, people are doing 5 jobs, but there's the finance team that's just doing the finance job. So those ones you can, get people from structured environment. But I'll call out that one as one of the reasons why sometimes you don't get shortlisted, especially in tech. They want people who are able to adapt to like different waves and seasons. And in tech, every month is it's like a brand new year, really. There's always a change. Sometimes you go through change monthly or quarterly, and then not many people can adapt to that. And that's fine. It's not right or wrong. Some of the things I can also think of why people don't hear back is, the time of your application. So if you do apply, maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks after the application went live, it's very likely that the recruiter is not going to look at your resume immediately. So they've already shortlisted, had first level screens. They've probably found like 5 people exciting, and they've batched them up. So you are like not the priority at the moment. So that could happen. And then sometimes, we could go into the pile and be like, oh, this person stands out. Let me fast track them. So there are nuances there, but those are some of the examples I was thinking about when I asked this question, because I get this question a lot, like, why don't I get shortlisted? Look at my CV. Oh, this is fantastic CV. So sometimes it's not about your resume. It's about the timing. It's about a little bit about the precision comments we talked about earlier, like, what could a company be looking for at this stage? There's also like internal mobility, which we love, but pisses us off as recruiters, because we went to market to find external people, but somehow someone internal said, I want the job, and they got the job because they went through the process, and typically it's fast tracked for them because they don't have to go through TA screen and all that, like cultural alignment. You're already in there. So more likely than not, you are already a fit in that sense. So these are a couple of examples why you might not hear back from an organization. So that's what I was thinking, by the way, when I asked the question. So if you guys had any more, that'd be nice. But yeah, it's fine. And I have one last question before we go. I know I should have, I'm sorry. I know that I said that's the last word. Last one is, what would you say to someone out there who is still in that space of like, a job is still a job. I don't want to do more than my job. I'm just gonna stay in my lane. I don't want to do more than myself. This company does not deserve that energy of me doing more than my JD says. So anyone who's still sticking to their job description, what is your feedback or what is your comments to them, especially thinking about how tech moves crazy? What would you be saying to someone who is still in 2026 saying, I stay on my lane, I mind my business, I get my salary, and that's all it is?
2 words: you absolutely have to overstep, and you have to be visible. Several years ago, I wrote a knowledge nugget called the second CV, which is competence and visibility. If you're working in a globally distributed team, you absolutely have to be seen. It's not the competency and skill sets that make you stand out in calibrations. We get into performance calibrations, and there's a team of 100 people, but maybe the quota is maybe 7 promotions and 3 bonuses. Who's going to give you a bonus or promotion when you're not even visible? You absolutely have to overstep. I think that this is a very broad conversation, because people are like, oh, Nneka, but I don't want to overstep. I don't want people to be annoyed. But you actually have to overstep in healthy ways. You have to go above and beyond, not just because you want to be promoted, but because you want to upskill. You want to be able to add value, especially if you're working in a very cross-functional setting. So again, to iterate, you have to be visible, absolutely, because your work is great, but people have to remember. You have to communicate in a way that is very compelling, and you have to overstep. You have to show curiosity in other types of work that has an intersection, into the work that you do.
I love that. Final words, Felix. I promise that's the last question. I have nothing.
No, Nneka talked about all the like professional nice and what you have to do and all that. I have 2 questions for that person. Do you want to go? Do you want to be relevant? Then you have no business saying all of that. So do what Nneka just said.
I could not agree more. Mic drop. Thank you, guys. This was amazing. Thank you for honoring the invitation and spending your time. And just, as we try to give back to our community, thank you so much. If anyone has any follow-up questions or anything, I think you guys got some emails from me, so feel free to reach out. And if you want to connect with Nneka and Felix, you can find them on LinkedIn using their full names, which you would find on the flyer. I can't confirm or guarantee that they will accept your request tonight, but yes, they will look at it at some point. But yes, I'm asking you guys, be open. Let your DMs be open in case anyone needs any career guidance or advice. But I want to say a big thank you to everyone again.
And if anyone needs travel advice as well, I'm also beyond just, I have been to 74 countries. So if you also need tips and tricks, for travel hacks, I'm your girl.
Actually start doing some content around that, because Nneka, like I said to you guys, Nneka she could be in Nairobi tonight and she's in Lagos tomorrow. I don't know how she does it. But yeah, I guess God is her strength, because I love to travel, but I could not even do what you do. So well done. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up now. Thank you again. Yeah, and hopefully we'll see you guys at the next Check Without the Code. If you do have thoughts on what you'd like us to discuss, I'm very open to that. I've gotten a lot of comments in my emails and on LinkedIn, like, oh, will you talk about this or that? Bring the suggestions. I'm very flexible and open. We're doing this for you guys anyways, not for ourselves. So yeah. All right, then take care, everyone. Have a good evening or whatever it is when it comes for you.
Bye, everyone.
John.
Bye.
Bye.